So we're live with on the Ideamarket Podcast, actually going live for the first time. We're here with Michael Elias, the CEO of Ideamarket, and we're joined by Michael Beck. Now, before we get into your background, Michael, I believe, Mike, you want to talk about how you first met Michael. And
Yes,
I'm looking forward to this story because this is all you've been going on about for
yes,
the last week.
I've been making sure. Yes, I've been making sure not to tell it so that it's fresh. Mr. Beck here is perhaps my oldest friend in crypto. When I first got into the industry, I was working for a healthcare crypto startup, and we were raising money, and I was going around to VCs to try to raise money, but I was fresh, right? I barely knew the industry. It was just a few months in, and it's just like, all right, a full fake it till you make it mode. And I really appreciate that. I had the basics down and knew like what to say in certain situations, and it was just a matter of like putting on the right face after that. And Mike's experience in the healthcare industry made him very familiar with all the vicissitudes of trying to disrupt it with blockchain, of which I had no clue, right? So I was in this meeting talking to a VC, and Michael was there advising him. And after we had talked for a while, Michael pretty much just said, "Now look, I've been doing this a long time. There's about 46,000 reasons this isn't going to work. Here's what they are. 1, stuff. 2, things. 3, stuff and things." And he was just very sweet and laid it out just like end to end, and was obviously trying to help and not like shoot things down. And it was just awesome. And we've been friends ever since. He's a brilliant guy. I keep running into him in different locations all over the world. And it's been a real pleasure to see your success with Union. And I'm glad we found the time to talk.
Thanks a lot, Mike. I really appreciate it. I really, enjoyed that day. It was really great meeting you then. And, I've liked seeing how, things have progressed for you in the community, and, the way that you've decided to take your passion for, blockchain and all other things, forward. And, thank you today to you and James for having me on the podcast. Really, really do appreciate it.
Great pleasure.
All right, man. So instead of sort of saying, the typical "Who are you? What do you do?" question, Michael, we have a unique question here. If you were to develop a course, a boot camp, the purpose of which was at the end of the boot camp, the people who had undertaken it would be as alike you as possible, a boot camp to create clones of you, what would that look like in practice?
Oh, wow. I'm not sure I could answer that one. There are a lot of formative experiences I feel like I've had along the way. I don't come necessarily to blockchain straight from, a background in computer science or systems. I was actually a political economist by discipline. I focused on monetary policy and international trade as an undergraduate, and I actually have an MBA in marketing and finance. Technology was always something in the background for me. I started off early on testing video games and running bulletin board systems. Now I'm dating myself. Eventually getting involved in that newfangled World Wide Web thing that everyone was talking about. The internet was new. I wrote some early applications, developed what could have been considered probably the first commercial application to let you upload a file through a web browser. And back in '96, that was a big deal. Did early electronic commerce work for large companies, and ultimately started trying to sell data rooms right as the bubble collapsed. And ran for cover into healthcare, which is where a lot of the formative experience Michael was referencing came from. I was a lead enterprise architect for a Fortune 50 healthcare concern, and during that time was also an attendant of the two towers, the Twin Towers downtown Manhattan, and was running late to work that day. So I spent a large amount of time in my career reconstituting assets after buildings collapsed. It taught me a lot about business continuity and also about teamwork and resilience. I found my way doing more technology and due diligence work following that, and think ultimately started a small information security company, a cryptography company focused on patient control over data. We got some intellectual property there, and I tried to get funding in 2008, and 2008 is pretty much when the world stopped again. And I ran for cover into, of all places, Bear Stearns. So actually, that group went whole into JP Morgan, and I found myself at a large hedge fund working, in wealth management, building out systems to help manage daily operations for, what was a global hedge fund. So, I have a lot of, different stories that come together between healthcare, information security, and wealth management, since a lot of the stuff that brought me to blockchain was someone saying, hey, you have some intellectual property in cryptography. What do you think about this cryptocurrency and blockchain stuff? So I wrote a private equity thesis back in 2014, and that kind of drugged me backwards, into the depths of what was blockchain and cryptocurrency, and I haven't been out since. So that was really where things started for me, and where a lot of my formative community came from. I think along the way, the lessons learned are there's always a path. There's always a path forward in one form or another. There's always good community to be found. No matter how hard or how alone you think you might be, and truthfully, you have to be prepared to find opportunities because no one's going to give them to you. That's pretty much where I think everything has come together for me, and I'd say aside from those things, I don't know what else the boot camp would include. Maybe some frequent flyer miles. And
is there any, just out of interest,
late
is there
nights
any
in strange places?
is there any books that you would think this absolutely has to be part of that course?
I don't think that there are necessarily any books, but I do think that there's a willingness to learn. I mean, I did have a canon of books I came to along the way. I was one of those people who, while I was learning computer science, I'd like to get some of the more formative texts to understand how people thought about problems way before I did, because I found that there was a lot of continuity in the way that problems have been solved, from mainframe forward. There's a lot of continuity in thought. And a lot of those principles still, I think, hold true today, even as we think about decentralization and newer languages and different approaches to systems and system engineering. I think a lot of the techniques that we use that are successful stand proudly on the shoulders of things that came before. So I do like to think of things that I do inside of the canon and broader things that existed before me. And I'd like to think that if I'm going to pass something along, I have to contextualize what I do to ensure that people can follow it, after me. That's the short of, how I do things.
That makes sense. It seems like your appreciation for what's come before might be larger than that of others. With the rate of tech development, it kind of seems like, because I kind of feel similarly about psychology, that a lot of the best work was written maybe 100 years ago, and then there's kind of been a tradition that waxes and wanes since then. But the core of it is really much smaller than the field, and it seems like there may be parallels with reading back into the annals of computer science and how problems are solved. You can see the sort of traditions or patterns that endure through that whole period and see what their continuation might look like now.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, there's always new math. There's always people who try to reinvent things that they didn't know existed before. And as you have more knowledge that accumulates, around certain industries, you find people wanting to take shortcuts and not necessarily going back because they want to solve today's problem today, in a way that they've intellectualized it immediately with a set of requirements, not necessarily thinking about validating the experiences of people who aren't, there at the table with them. So there's always an urgency. There's always a sense of urgency. There's always a team that doesn't necessarily have a lot of experience, and someone tasked with the need to solve, the problem now. And as a result of that, you get a lot of emergent designs that don't have necessarily context, but might have some thought and some research, by someone with a strong, mind who's been put to solving the task. So it's not to discount necessarily everything that doesn't have that that formalism. But there are a lot of times when those decisions then have to be refactored later because they don't scale. And that's really the peril. You're always in a in systems specifically, you're always at a tension point between solving today's problem versus anticipating tomorrow's. And there's only so much a customer will deal with. Some customers would say, well, the design didn't, or the time didn't allow us to build a more robust design. Other customers might say the programmer should have known better. So that really is where I think the line gets drawn between developers and architects. I think that that's also where the line gets drawn, between paying and willing customers and people who you may not necessarily want to work for as a systems person. So it's you kind of have to measure out what the tolerance is in every environment that you work with, and prepare for the outcome.
Yeah. Regarding that tension, it sounds like you're definitely closer to the architect end of that spectrum, wanting to, be in context in that canon. I'm wondering who else are you seeing that's kind of doing this right in the crypto space or otherwise? Like, there's a lot of froth and a lot of invention. Who else has a similar approach to this, as kind of building on the shoulders of giants in that kind of reliable way, or long-term vision? Who's got the long time preference in that same sort of style?
I think that there's a lot of there are a lot of good solid people who've come in, especially in the beginning, around the development of the layer ones that we appreciate today. Who come to this with thinking about broader system problems and then building community. Software is hard to begin with. Making open source software is harder. Making open source software where people can throw tomatoes on you, at you on a daily basis, and adjust the value of your chain, because they like or don't like the way you're communicating with the community, is beyond harder than that. So I think crypto projects are probably the hardest type of software project, specifically because you always have some level of external scrutiny. You always have some level of external accountability, both to team and also extended community. It's not easy stuff, and software itself isn't easy stuff. There's lots of opportunities for software itself to go wrong. And then we like to say that blockchains are immutable. And, that's really great. It means that, blockchains, what you put on a chain doesn't change. But the things that make software successful tend to be iterative, that you can take tiny steps forward and that you can repeat or replace as you need to, through customer feedback. So there's a lot of this idea of building software and, to use the Back to the Future expression, breaking the flux capacitor. You can't necessarily, go back. You might have to build token contract 2 and get everyone to come along with you, in which case, your community fractures because not everyone wants to take the new token, or the chain fractures because not everyone wants to take the new mechanism for consensus, or, so there are always those perils that happen in blockchain that don't happen anywhere else. It actually kind of lends itself more to thinking about waterfall software development than agile software development, when everyone thinks about the perils of old system engineering, where you had to know everything that you were going to do up front and then make sure you hit the marks going forward and not take any feedback in between, because you might lose people along the way. Versus what people do now in terms of tighter, more iterative, user validated sets of code that necessarily capture all the non-functional requirements around things like logging and security and resilience, but eventually find their way to get there. Here, I think those things are expected to be built in. So projects, I think, that are successful tend to have more robust stories. And I hate to say it, team members who probably failed in other projects. So that's, I think the leading indicator of success in most software is, failure someplace else.
That makes sense. Why do you hate to say that? It sounds perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, but it makes you also wonder, when you get behind a new project, are you expecting it to fail just because someone came to the table, and they're new? And there are a lot of good reasons why new people also succeed, and a lot of that may come down to, no need for them to necessarily rely on what you and I would refer to the canon of things that happened before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you cheer for them because that means that you can pretty much disregard the canon that came before if they are successful. If you think about it, how many search engines were there before Google?
I don't know, 5 or 6 probably. I don't know, but they were all
I mean,
crap.
I'm thinking about maybe 10 or 12.
Yeah, okay.
Including things like ABC Go and Microsoft Network and AOL. And when you think about the contemporaries there, now if someone says, "Well, you're building a search engine," you only have to compare it to one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like if you're building a social network community, you don't have to think about CompuServe anymore. You go directly to Facebook. So it's, you would hope that, those types of things evolve and change, and work, to our benefit, because then we do learn new things. And, as an industry, we're standing taller.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
When, just out of interest, when these say new innovations or new iterations or like a phase change in technology does happen, how much do you think right place, right time factors in, or do you think that genuinely is they've clicked into something which is sort of like a truth?
It's both. I mean, I think truth is asymptotic. It really requires context. There's no objective truth. It's just a community of people who are willing to accept it. So, so someone comes in and a person or technology meets their market, and that market's robust enough in order to sweep it forward. That's I think what we see. And there are a lot of blockchains that do incredibly well at being able to engage their community and get people to build on top of on their approaches. I mean, I'd say, for instance, one of the biggest successes in blockchain that we can look to is the success of the Ethereum virtual machine. It's used among so many different chains at this point. And what it does is, pretty much what every other, runtime virtual machine would do. However, it's something that people don't feel like they need to recreate. It's created a basis for skill that's expected among, blockchain developers. It's created, a community of people who know the vulnerabilities that blockchain developers can introduce into a Turing complete environment. It's created, the opportunity to develop a whole generation of applications that otherwise would not be available. And then because it's portable, code that's written for one is portable between chains, it's now provided an opportunity for someone to not only decide what type of code they want to execute, but the context in which that code executes, in terms of what consensus mechanism or what backing chain is actually sponsoring those transactions. So, that's a great example of, it's not necessarily perfect, but it works. And, it's allowed, an industry to spring forward, primarily because of the community that's been formed around it.
With respect to the community aspect is really, it's interesting how in this technical field, how much of the success depends on completely non-technical things, that the human element of community and consensus, and just how inexorably distant that is from tech. That you can't compute agreement into a thing. It has to come from the meat layer first. And I think that's kind of underappreciated in general. I think there's a lot of development that seems to come from an "if you build it, they will come" sort of a place, like an overemphasis on the technical. And yet the sort of weather around the market kind of ends up determining what takes off, like where the cyclones end up forming and where the big centers of activity end up happening. There's stories of first mover advantage kind of being the predominant thing, or stories of trade-offs between quality and speed. Like I think this is not my area of expertise. You're probably a veritable museum on this stuff, and I'm just talking about like Ethereum and JavaScript, both of which were kind of, they were early as examples of their kind, and kind of took over the world with all their imperfections. And do you see a pattern as to like when that's the determining factor and when it's not? Like I'm thinking kind of like Kuhn's structure of scientific revolutions. Like sometimes there's a breakthrough and it changes the whole game, and it might be messy. And sometimes there's a more progressive sort of cumulative intra-paradigm evolution.
Well, I think that the thing that was interesting in the case of talking about Ethereum, eating the world, was before then it was forking Bitcoin and making changes to so many points in the software, and then having to find a group of people who are willing to validate that new chain. And chain validation technically should have economies of scale, but with differences in algorithm, it doesn't. So what Ethereum basically said is, in my mind at least, that the functionality that sits on top of the chain should be is something of independent consideration to the validation of the community that's supporting the validation of the chain. And that is, I think, what made it revolutionary to think about, what is a smart contract? Because a smart contract really sits there where, before it used to be the sum of inputs equals the sum of outputs on a ledger. And, where typically that equal sign sat, now you have a computational feature that does so much more than the sum of inputs equals the sum of outputs. So I think that, it created a utility layer, around what otherwise was, distributed computation. And, that was something that was needed. Now, before that, of course, there were things like the search for extraterrestrial life and Napster and, God, I'm dating myself with this stuff. Track servers and, Gopher server. I mean, there was a lot of.
Now you're dating yourself. I know Napster.
Yeah.
I know Napster.
Yeah. There you go. But the basic idea was, there were lots of communities where you could connect a server and have people browse your local directories and download stuff. But the computation was always local to one machine and then shipped back to another machine. The idea of every node having a complete copy of everything operating at that time, was not only redundant, but it was almost, almost impossible given, general consumer bandwidth. So, we have, I think that, there are some places where, the time and the technology meet the opportunity. I think if you were to have introduced something like Bitcoin earlier than when Bitcoin was introduced, it may have been really difficult to get off the ground. And I think that a lot of the systems concepts, were perfected prior, in various other forms. I mean, think about, if you even think about something like SHA-256. I mean, during the Clinton administration, that was not actually suitable for export. There were actually that was actually considered strong cryptography. So, so there were all kinds of things that had to, had to happen, in terms of the open cryptography projects, issues with, licensing and support. There was a lot more proprietary software, prior to 2008. Then after 2008, if you think about things like CollabNet and SourceForge, and a lot of now everyone thinks about it as Git repositories, but there were a lot of things that came before.
Yeah. What are you expecting to emerge now, or what are you seeing now that's kind of in the same sort of tradition? I'm interested. I'm trying to get like not your picks, but how does when you apply the filter of your knowledge to today's crypto industry, what are the standouts? Are we having a technical difficulty?
We might be.
Camera issue? All right. In that case, let's revert to telling jokes about the things that are on my desk.
Short delay.
Yeah. Pardon us, folks, while we figure this out real quick. I'd like to introduce you to my squid. This is like a little metallic. It's kind of half squid, half submarine, half has lights inside. It's an artwork that I bought, also known as a physical NFT.
I did wonder what it was.
Why didn't you say anything? I put it there specifically to tempt you to say something.
Because I just don't find it very interesting.
Really?
No,
Really?
I'm kidding.
Super.
I'm kidding.
It's the most interesting thing ever.
I hope this isn't when most people log on and see us chatting. Like we've just. Okay. Well, now it is just me and you.
All right. Yeah, it is. All right. Open your Bibles to page. Yeah.
So now you're going to learn how to say the rosary. Step 1.
Yes. Yeah, Michael should be back in a minute. And in the meantime, in the meantime, we were talking about decentralization. Where do you stand on, there's a huge hype, right? Everything's becoming decentralized. Do you think Michael's back. There we go. Well, I'll never ask you that question. No.
You'll have to wonder.
When I apply my knowledge to what, and then the phone will start.
When you filtered today's crypto industry through your particular knowledge and perspective, what are the standouts? What are the projects or problems or solutions that really seem to have their act together in a unique way? Because I feel like you'd have different picks than many people. I feel like you'd have different a different taste, different sense of taste in crypto projects.
But before you answer, let me get a pen so I know what to invest in, right? Straight after.
The answer is really easy. Get in DeFi Insurance. I think DeFi Insurance is really where the future is.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
But
hell yeah.
Why specifically insurance?
I was giving a casual nod to the project I'm in, but no.
We will talk about that, but also just at face value, couldn't agree more. That's the most slam dunk use case. Absolutely.
Well, no, I was being a bit of a smartass about it. I think that there are a lot of places where things are getting interesting. I'm specifically interested very much in both mem coins and also NFTs. I think that there's a lot of value in what's being done in terms of digital collectibles. The idea of a digital collectible has been, around in one form or another for over 20 years. The idea that it now exists in a decentralized form, it's composable and it can be transferred, is amazing. So this is, I think that there's a lot of excitement that people should get from, the idea of a spawning metaverse. It almost makes every Johnny Mnemonic book make sense at this point in some way. This is the way that we build the future. Sometimes the future is inspired by our fiction. Sometimes it's the other way around, I guess. I think that, the movement to NFTs is interesting. I don't necessarily know that all of them have value. Just the same, I think that there's a lot of value to, like I said, mem coins. And the reason why is because I think they provide convenient bumper sticker sort of gateways to bring in popular opinion and popular consensus and popular participation in ways that more complex projects or more complex tokens with more mandate just lose the average community. I can't necessarily sell my mother on the idea of buying a token that allows her to aggregate the risk of various smart contracts, but I can probably sell her on the idea that this token represents a dog and she likes dogs. Mm-hmm. So it's
why do you think that is? Because everybody would understand that in terms of investment value, that the former one you mentioned, which sounds all very serious and analytical, right? That would probably be the best bet. Why do you think people are seemingly more willing to, your average person who probably would never get into investments? Why do you think they're more willing to just lob money at the Dogecoin?
For the same reason some people pick their favorite soccer team on the basis of team colors. It's whatever the basic affinity might be. They don't necessarily know the roster. They know that they have to get there and cheer. They want to show up. They don't want to look like a complete idiot. And they get behind someone who has the colors they like, with a group of people that's probably more sizable than than any other option of the same color.
Do you think that in a certain way harms our idea of value, or just teaches us more about what value is?
Well, it's a gateway. It's a gateway. It provides an opportunity for people to learn more about value. I mean, so you really have to bring people to the venue and find a way to get them and capture them. And, I was talking to someone whose son bought several $100s of sheep and now is sitting there, with several $1,000s of sheep. And, as someone in middle school, he feels like he made a good investment. And that may be the formative, the formative decision that creates the next Warren Buffett. We don't know.
Well, the one going around at the moment is the guy who bought $8,000 worth of sheep a year ago is now. I saw this earlier. I'm still in disbelief. Yeah. It's worth $5 billion.
Yes.
That can't be real. But there you go.
By the way, and during the Bitcoin Miami conference, you would hear the same thing about Doge. Right, where you have people who typically would not be involved in the crypto economy who got in on this idea of a funky dog coin because of a post by Elon Musk. And before you know it, they have a new car or a new house or paid off a kid's tuition. And it was an economic opportunity that they otherwise would not have availed themselves to if not for the accessibility of the concept. Now, that's now where they decide.
Are you still there?
Yeah, give us a thumbs up if you can hear us. Oh, I think we might be having the same issue again.
I think we lost him again.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say it's fascinating that the dumber version or like the meme version of Bitcoin, which is basically what Dogecoin is, like code-wise, it's not that different from Bitcoin if I understand correctly. Mm-hmm. You can just like wrap a complicated thing in a simple wrapper, and it's the same thing. And that one catches. That's the mind-blowing part to me. That it just turns out that in practice, you wrap Bitcoin in a dog, and now it's accessible. You know what I mean? Like there was no extra fundamental value to.
It's literally Girard once again, isn't it? I like that, like memetics. It's, everybody, like, for instance, like, if you said it's Pokemon coin, you'd be like, well, I like Pokemon. My friend likes Pokemon. He's bought the coin.
But it makes me wonder, like, if you had called the original Bitcoin Dogecoin, would it have needed a Dogecoin? Because like, it started with people who understood Bitcoin forking it.
That would be an
Dogecoin
interesting experiment, though. I mean, obviously you'd never be able to do it, but if it was in reverse, would you then have people who would look at that and go, right, this is great, but we need to tweak the code a tiny amount, which I think Dogecoin has done, but we need to give it a serious name for people who genuinely see, like, like you can't have. It seems then that the common public statement with regard to that is that you can't simultaneously have silliness and fun with like serious tech innovation. You can't be like, we're changing the economic world, and by the way, this is called like Big Cat's coin. Right, like you would never take this seriously. Like if you said, oh, there's this bank in town, new bank started up, amazing interest rates, amazing benefits, great insurance policies, brilliant mortgages. What are they called? They're called like Super Happy Funtime Bank. You go, I don't like. You just wouldn't believe them. You were like, right. You're not having my money. So there's a relationship between trust and
that's what you would think.
Supposed seriousness.
That's what you would think.
You'd think that, yeah.
Yeah.
But in practice, what happens then? Where
yeah. I'm starting to wonder if you wrap a serious thing in a joke, if that's not just superior.
Or you could wrap a serious thing in a joke, but you can also apply the joke.
I'll try this again if you guys will have me. I was not built for
always.
Apparently was not built for live streaming.
It's good. It's good to find out now.
Yeah, no.
Before you get famous.
I think he's gone again. But
I see a little red thing.
Oh no, he's back. He's back.
Okay.
Yeah. It seems like your streams is having a connection issue. Okay. Well, gentlemen, I'm back. Yeah, no, I was just saying that my hope would be that those new economic opportunities create an option now for those parties to reinvest and get more deeply involved in the community, or maybe get behind another meme coin to drag other people along. So I think that those are two things that are great. in terms of that. People get the idea of collectibles. They get comic books and baseball cards and art and, NFT entitlements to gold bars and things like that.
Hang on. Wait, hang on. There's NFT entitlement for gold bars?
Yes, there are.
Isn't that literally restarting the entire money economy? Because that's originally what money was, right?
There are people who transfer gold bars using NFT entitlements.
Okay.
And, in the same way that I guess, pretty soon you could do the same thing with property of other sorts, properties and, homes and cars and, portions of homes and portions of buildings. And, there's a lot of opportunity here with the NFT world. So I think that there's a lot of, you find that as these conversations get larger, they bring in more people who look less like computer people and more people, who do other things. And that's what makes this conversation so much more interesting than traditional software.
And who?
Oh, sorry, Mike. I was going to say, what do you think this focus really is, like the underlying thing we're talking about here is the future of decentralization. What do you think the future is for centralization? Do you think it has one?
I think that there's a right scope between centralization and decentralization. Like, not everything needs to be decentralized. And in many cases, when you decentralize something, you make it more difficult because you disaggregate its component value in a way that typically, in a centralized organization or a centralized approach, you have the value benefit of a brand.
Mm-hmm.
or an organizing entity to shepherd behavior and at least popular path of navigation, so that not everything is a customer support issue at every point. So it's interoperable systems tend to start off as I think very dense and less fragmented, and then over time through luxury and convenience, they become more fragmented because of standardized interfaces and, more popular approaches and, more popular vendors and the need for interoperability. So I think that, things that need to be centralized, will stay centralized. Things that should be decentralized will be decentralized. People will make value judgments about how decentralized, for instance, they want their search engine. How censorship resistant do they need their message boards? Those types of things. In different places, different people prefer, service over privacy. That's one of those things, like with healthcare. People prefer, in many cases, to receive treatment as opposed to knowing that their record is, denied to everyone, even in the event of a medical emergency. Just the same, though, no one wants their medical record disclosed to necessarily their employer. Where they might be giving an indication of how expensive they may be, for the future plan re-enrollment. So it's those types of things, I think, lead to, questions around, centralization versus decentralization. So it's usually security, security versus availability, and privacy versus service. Those are really your tension points. And those are the things I think that, drag forward in the discussion consistently from the beginning of all this stuff.
I'm noticing you use the analogy of tension points a lot, and that's cool. I'm wondering do the best solutions always provide a creative or superior resolution to those tension points? Is that the definition of success, or is that just kind of one of the things? Like, how do you see that relationship?
Well, I look at it as, strategic choice, right? You make a choice, in order to.
Damn, I don't know why we caught him for the last minute there.
It's cliffhanger.
Yes, I need to know. I'm obsessed with metaphors and heuristics. If you're listening and you have metaphors and heuristics, please,
email me at metaphorsandeuristics.com.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna go on Namecheap and buy that right now. But I also want to ask more about NFTs and stuff, because it's so funny. NFTs are one of those things like Dogecoin that, especially in their current incarnation, just look like silliness. And it took me a long time. I was so late on NFTs, man. It was like embarrassing. Like, I'm early on some things, freaking not early on some things. And
Well, it's like they're
yeah,
talking about though, like as an NFT as property or as a part of a property.
that makes
That
sense.
is important, but they've been trying to do that for years, and I think the technology's only just caught up. So I think
Yeah,
we've had that early NFT phase, and it's sort of like a wave where it'll be like, oh, NFTs, like that was that fun collectibles thing, and it'll go down, and then people who like the Bitcoin phenomenon, people who realize the seriousness of it will then begin to actually create, and it'll then so it sort of had that first pump, and then it goes
yeah,
down and then it goes right up. And I
yeah,
think like it will begin to be taken more seriously as they're used for more serious things. It seems to be going through its Dogecoin phenomena already.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the more serious use cases make more obvious sense. It's sort of like that distinction. Have you heard the distinction between high and low context cultures or languages? Have you heard that
No,
reference made before?
no.
So there's this idea that different languages or different cultures have a high context or low context way of communicating.
Right.
High context means you have to like know the culture and read into the implications of things. It's very sort of oblique and
Mm-hmm.
vibe based. And
Mm-hmm.
low context is like I am giving you the information. The point of language is to transfer information in
Okay.
this box into this
Yeah,
box.
yeah. Okay.
Um, and you
And
can see this.
you think NFTs is extremely high context?
I think on the spectrum, it's definitely toward the high end, especially like
Yeah.
the silly stuff. Like you have to feel the rhythms of vibes and stuff. Like it's all about like I was literally talking to a VC about Ideamarket, and he was like, "Yeah, this investing in crypto industry is really just much more vibe based than I expected. When I started, I was like, trying to be rigorous about financials and details and stuff like that. And it's just like, no, it's there's really a lot of vibe stuff going on, and that's not just on Twitter. That's real. So yeah, and as far as technical innovation goes, the collectible and art and cultural aspects of the NFT movement seems to be on the high context end of the spectrum, whereas
Mm.
stuff like DeFi insurance, like you put two and two together. DeFi comes with new kinds of risks, and if you can insure against them, then you take away one of the biggest objections to getting involved with DeFi. Just kill it dead, right? And you obviate the need for perfect smart contracts and perfect security of various kinds. Just insure it, done. It like eliminates the asymptotic gap between the best we can do and perfect, and that just takes down the like objection barrier for people. So DeFi insurance, obvious, perfect, sensible use case, and very low context. You don't need to know the vibes to get that value prop. And I'm I tend to be more inclined to get the low context stuff faster than the high context stuff because I'm a nerd. It's the low context is the domain of the nerd. It needs everything spelled out concretely. Welcome
He's
back.
back.
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah,
All good.
so I apologize. Really, I'm not built for live streaming. So, um, and I'll tell you, on this side, the device seems to say it's charged, but for whatever reason, it seems to be cutting out its network and then rebooting every once in a while. So I have to think that
Weird.
there's something going on in the background process where after a while it says, I've done too much productive stuff. I need to change that. So
It reminds me. Oh, this is going to be so annoying, but I'm going to tell this story anyway. There's a
go
story
ahead.
about when the conquistadors, or I guess Christopher Columbus, whoever came to America and was trying to get the Indians away so that they could just settle and just marching them somewhere in some horrific fashion. All of a sudden, a bunch of the Indians just kind of sat down and just refused to run. And it wasn't just like they were tired; they just sat down. And one of the conquistador, I can't think of the politically correct term for this stuff, so I'm just going to say that. Asked
California will give
the
you a pass.
chief. I'm in California. That's true.
Yeah,
He
we'll give you
asked
a pass.
one of the invaders, let's say, one of the invaders asked the chief or someone who could translate on the Indian side, "What's going on? Why these guys just sit down?" And he said they're waiting for their souls to catch up with their bodies. And I like this framing. And I kind of think maybe you're doing so much productive stuff that your phone is just like, I need to cosmically protect Michael Beck from stretching the tension between universes too thin here and slow this down. I need to hit the brakes.
I look at the same way, when there's like a long line, at a toll booth. Being way too productive getting from point A to point B. Need some time to breathe.
I think that's it.
Effectively we're going. I hope that's the case. If not, maybe I just need another phone. So,
I think I'm going through the same thing actually. My phone has got a whole, new personality. I have to feed it treats if I want to get on the internet. It's crazy.
there you go.
Yeah.
So I think I was talking. You were asking me about strategic choice and what it meant. I think in terms of addressing some of these tensions, and I was just saying that I think that making choices, define who we are, just in the same way that choices adopted by technology define what those technologies can do, and how those technologies scale. So if you have there are very, very few unopinionated technologies. I mean, there are some unopinionated theoretical technologies, of course, but very few unopinionated applied technologies.
Could not agree more.
And that's really the way to think about it. So by the time you get to certain things. I mean, if I were to think about an Apple device, like an iPad, doesn't have a keyboard. Originally, and it's a hard thing to do a lot of input with, but you can consume a lot of media. I would argue an Android device, in some ways is much easier to give input to, but then again, you're producing a lot of input. You're producing a lot of data. So I mean, even between two mobile operating environments. One seems to be a device for disseminating data. Another one seems to be a device for collecting data.
She's saying the medium is the message.
I think that the choices, the technology choices, ultimately, manifest themselves in what we do and how we use them.
Man, I want to go down that rabbit hole forever. What are some other what are some other interesting opinions that technologies display? Because this is a theme that really resonates with Ideamarket because it's an argument.
On that line of opinions, I mean, the inherent opinion of I would say of Bitcoin technology specifically is a distrust of centralized banking, right? Which is why I don't think when banks such as in the UK, banks such as Santander are trying to create their own cryptocurrency, it's like a contradiction of opinions, right? You guys don't get to do that as well. Like you can't have both of these things in the same place because it just doesn't work. So there's probably a lot of examples of that, of why things fail is because like you're not part of this narrative. You don't get to have this opinion.
You don't get to have this opinion with this technology. This technology does not allow you. Blockchain will not allow you. To do a lot of censorship. A public blockchain won't allow you to censor a lot of stuff. A private blockchain will. Once you've accepted it's a public blockchain, censorship is another question. You can go out there with your Zcash and find out. 6 years later, everyone can read your transactions.
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
Because it's a public blockchain.
And there's so much trust. This is one of the biggest challenges I think with privacy solutions in general, especially in crypto, is that it's incredibly trust-based. Like only the top crypto privacy experts in the world really know the extent to which something is private, and then everything else is trusting those people to be right. Mm-hmm. So like no matter how good Zcash is, and I've all respect to Zuko, I like him a lot, I can't actually verify that things are as private as he says. Or as the Monero's create, there's no way that gap is ever going to be bridged because it requires that top 0.010% knowledge in order to evaluate it at all.
The difference here is you have the possibility to find out whether or not that's true. I will never be able to know whether or not the bank actually has my money.
That's absolutely true. By design, that's a strategic choice. Unless everyone goes to run on the bank at the same time and the bank is able to meet everyone's demand, you have no way to know whether the bank actually had the supply available to it.
That's a good point.
Whereas I could do the digging into Bitcoin like to a degree where I go, okay, I finally understand it well enough to know that this is what it is.
Yeah.
It's interesting that
you can throw infinite resources at figuring it out, and then someone else might come along and reinterpret it differently, and then you can have a huge intellectual debate. And fractionalize the community gets fractionalized, and before you know it, you have a fork, like say Bitcoin Cash.
Now, feel free to stop me if you don't want to talk about this, but what is the opinion you're building into Union Finance?
Oh, what opinion do we have there?
Yeah.
We like to think DeFi should be easy, cheap, and less risky. That's really where we started from, and our opinion is that DeFi shouldn't just be for whales. That's kind of the implication, right?
Yeah.
That a lot of what goes into transactions, if you look at the nominal value of gas, in a lot of DeFi transactions, I mean that's much more than most Americans save in their 401k on a monthly basis. So, DeFi is definitively a rich man's sport. And there's not a lot of room for error as a result of that, because you go out there and $10,000 can disappear pretty fast.
Yeah.
Whereas someone can go into the market, buy a share of Apple Computer, and they know that the share of Apple Computer is okay, and everyone else eats the transaction fees, and the back end is cleared, and they can walk away. They don't have to worry about the subsequent issues of, well, what happens if I lose my private key? Ameritrade or E-Trade will always answer the phone and make sure that you can reestablish connection with your account. So we think that or what happens if a share of Apple really isn't a real share of Apple? It's a share of something else that looks like Apple but isn't. It's really an orange. That's that's another risk in DeFi. Or hey, I thought that I thought this bank was secure, but actually all the vaults open at a certain time and anyone can take the value. That's what happens with a smart contract hack. Or hey, someone can change the clock that everything runs by, and as a result, a dollar is not worth $1 anymore. $1 is worth slightly less than $1. So someone was able to walk away with $500 million, because of an Oracle hack, or some manipulation of an Oracle value. So I think that there are a lot of those pending risks that happen when you go from, say, for instance, buying a Dogecoin to going into more sophisticated DeFi scenarios that users balk at. And, our opinion is that users shouldn't have to balk. We think that, users should be able to get fair value for their collateral. And that there may not necessarily be a time value of money component on blockchain. I think there's a chain that actually did attempt a time value of money component, but independent of that, there should be there should be a way for people to utilize their capital more effectively over the determined periods where it's locked in, for instance, a lending and borrowing scenario. So we look at that as one place where we think we can help simplify and make DeFi less expensive. The other place is definitely around event and parametric risk. In terms of being able to find ways to move capital outside of, what would be traditional investment theses on chain, and allow people exposure to things that are off chain, which would be, typically providing insurance, for instance, in marketplaces where those marketplaces have sizable defects and traditional incumbents won't provide those insurances. So like flood insurance, plate insurance, weather insurance, insuring certain types of transport, etc., where large insurance carriers don't necessarily find cost-effective mechanisms for being able to source that capital, but 150 billion locked in DeFi, is looking to find an adequate return, might be able to address those needs in the marketplace. So that makes choices cheaper for the average consumer. And so we like that. We like that a lot. We don't like to spend too much time thinking about DeFi for DeFi's sake. Although it's really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do.
Indeed. I really like the idea of, I mean, I was just saying, well, and one of your slowdown periods, I was telling James that DeFi insurance is a no-brainer use case, brings, eliminates a huge objection that people might have when they're thinking about whether to participate in DeFi, and just makes the whole thing safer, obviates the need for perfect security, which is never going to be possible in any tech stack. But you mentioned a use case here that I hadn't thought that much about, that I really like a lot, which is the bridging on-chain and off-chain assets. Because a lot of the time, if you're trying to track ownership or rights on-chain to a physical asset off-chain, there's that huge problem of, like, how do you know the thing is in the state it's supposed to be off-chain? And I know Materium's working on that, and you're working with them on that. But I really like that solution, because the the digital physical gap has always been where the most intractable, frustrating problems arise. Like, it goes back to printers for me. And the printer is the notoriously most finicky piece of technology in the universe. Just taking something from here and getting it down here is like the biggest gap to bridge. And if you're talking about value and ownership, it's the same thing with higher stakes and more variables. And if I could pay $10 to know that the paper I spent all week working on, even if it doesn't print, I'll still get credit for it because I've insured it. I've insured its ability to reach the physical world from the digital. I would totally do that. So compound that by like $1 million for a $10 million asset represented by an NFT. And the insurance use case of that, I think, is awesome. Am I thinking of that kind of the same way you are? Because I'm just wrapping my head around this for the first time.
Yeah, I lost you for a little bit in there when you were talking about the printer. But yeah, the printer seems to be where I fall down to, for whatever reason. Changing what is it? The Negroponte example was changing bits into atoms is always problematic.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But I've been I think that there's some good opportunities in that. And a lot of that is using humans to verify and humans to do things, and expressing their consensus in terms of voting, using things like tokens to say whether they think things happened or didn't happen, which sounds a lot like governance in some ways.
It does a little bit, or like judicial kind of a thing.
Yeah, kind of like stuff like when people vote. So it basically then brings everything back to collective action. How much do we care about what state that thing off chain is in, and how many people can we get to care?
Yeah.
So,
but I guess you could pay people for caring. I guess that's the Materium model, is to have an expert who cares and certifies, and that he takes the risk on it.
Yep. You have an expert who cares, and you have people who pay that expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
then
cool.
Then you need people to warranty in case the expert's wrong.
Yeah. Reinsurance, like the extra layers of it. Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. Like, I've been a fan of DeFi insurance as a concept since Nexus Mutual was like first launching their token. I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be a thing. But the off-chain, on-chain, that blows it even wider open.
Yeah, the challenge is how you couple them with responsibility. How do you make people accountable? I mean, are humans oracles? That's
and what's the alternative if they're not?
Well, yeah.
Like yeah.
So I think a lot of machine-fi is trying to answer that.
Yeah. I want to return to NFTs for a little bit, because I wanted to ask you. It's so interesting because I think of you as a very technically minded person, and yet you appreciate the meme coin and like the cultural stuff so well. It makes me wonder. Like, I have this continual question I'm trying to figure out is, how do you distinguish the weird, silly stuff that's going to take off from just other weird, silly stuff? Is there some kind of fundamental analysis of meme coins?
Growing up, there was always that quirky cool kid.
Yeah.
And sometimes people would follow them.
So it's all just vibe. It's all just vibes. All just vibe recognition.
I was one of those people who said, yeah, look at the quirky cool kid. He probably knows what's up. So, if you see too many of them going in the same direction, chances are, you might be onto something.
All right.
So, I don't know what else to say. It takes a pig to find truffles. So you got,
that makes sense.
There's some arbiters of good taste, clearly there's some run also ideas, right? You see that a lot, and I don't want to, say specifically one chain ecosystem, but, if you look at a lot of what comes through with mem coins on the Binance Smart Chain, it's really hard to arbitrate, to be an arbiter of quality, among the volume of tokens that are introduced in that environment. It's hard. It's much easier to do that, for instance, maybe, with mem coins that would be introduced in, a more regimented and better curated environment, like, say, an Avalanche. But I don't think Avalanche has mem coins. So,
not yet.
Yeah.
But if anyone from Avalanche watches this, they'll probably realize it's a good idea.
It probably is, because people would think that, hey, that's this is a quality mem coin.
Yeah.
Because the ethos of the ecosystem is such that it begets that type of that disposition going in. Whereas every time I think of another mem coin on Binance, I wonder, is this a scam? How long does this operate for? When exactly does the dump start? That's
I mean, I still think that about Sheeb. I still think that about Doge. Like that question seems to continue to apply even on more mature chains, right?
Yeah, but you have to remember, it's the speed of the dump versus the addition of new wallets. So you have a velocity question, right?
Yeah.
So as long as there are people not holding crypto, there's still an opportunity for someone else to buy.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of these gateways.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And NFTs are kind of like the protocol version of that gateway. It's the primordial ooze out of which many gateways come. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
There's something special about Dogecoin in that it's existed for a long time. And at many points, it has come to be worth like nothing for extended periods, just in bear markets. It was sitting there, and you could buy what would be worth $1 billion of it today for nothing close to that. And I'm floored by how wide open the opportunity is and has been, that just sat there for so long, just waiting for someone to go, it's a bear market. In a bull market, this will be an obvious choice. It always, like, you can look at the chart for the last 3 bull markets. This has done this parabola. It's at the bottom now. I can buy with no risk. As long as there's a bull market in the future, it'll be a gain. And it's just, I can't think of a more articulate way to say it than just how much opportunity was just sitting there waiting to be picked up as simply as an object on the table. Just extraordinary. And I can't help but think that there's that kind of opportunity sitting around all the time. And absolutely. I wonder, do you have any reads on what that might be? And I don't mean this in like an investment tip kind of way, but that huge disparity between value and recognition, I mean, that's just got to be everywhere all the time.
I mean, I think the biggest one, that we see is in our personal data.
In the like Facebook knows all about you kind of sense, or what do you mean?
In the way that we give, we leave artifacts of our preferences every day, everywhere we go. Whether it be, in terms of, where our browser connects, or what we purchased, or, what we asked DoorDash or Grubhub to send us. We don't try to monetize those things because we don't know how to catalog them. We don't know how to find what an accurate price for those things would be. Because as consumers, we don't necessarily know how to, make our choices or our preferences interoperable. How I order something, how I order a pizza and how you order a pizza are 2 different ways. We order them different ways. We probably would describe them differently. So, James, who may be a pizza data purchaser, needs to have a standard that both of us conform to. And we're better at vesting our knowledge and, our preferences with James than it is for us to maintain our knowledge and preferences for ourselves. So I think that we give up on, intrinsic value all the time because we don't know how to monetize it or we don't see a marketplace for it. And I think personal data is the biggest one, and everyone would say, well, that's just out the gate. But the bottom line is, there's a lot of data that hasn't been created yet.
Yeah. So would you say, if I understand correctly, it sounds like you're saying we need something like a Fitbit for data, something that just follows us around and tracks all the things and collects it for us. And then
track everything. Yeah, track everything, monetize it all. No, that's. But it's
if we're not going to, DoorDash and Facebook and Google, like someone's going to, right? Like
they already do.
Is. Yeah,
they already do. But that's an example for me is the same thing that you're seeing in the Doge marketplace. Where people look at this and they see it and they have the opportunity to pick it up and it could be worth millions someday, but they don't do anything with it because they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Why do I need this? Why do I need this dog coin? What's it going to do for me? Well, the few people who understood what the Dogecoin could do in terms of providing a gateway, in terms of being able to provide, financial, independence or whatever else they could peddle, found a group of people they could market it to. So what did they do? They took the proverbial, furniture they found on the street corner, they polished it up and they sold it over, at a secondhand fair. And that's free money.
That's interesting though, because it changes, you have these functions of trade, right? Originally, the original function of trade was the utility function. Unless it had a use that you could discern, you wouldn't trade anything for it because there's no point, right? You would only trade, you say, right, I want that thing because I can actually use it. Whereas then we changed to money, which then allowed us to buy things we could use. So now it sort of seems that that's been turned on its head. You're turning that on its head in the sense that we understand Doge is basically inherently useless, but you can then flip that on its head by wrapping it up in a certain way that it then becomes it turns into something with utility, as you say. Its utility is as a gateway. And do you think that that's happening with more and more things? Is like you wrap it up in a certain way and use it basically as an in to reel in all those people who just haven't been brought into the crypto space yet. Like what is their like piece of bait that we need to find?
Yeah, it's like free drinks on Friday, that type of thing. Come to the venue. Drinks were always there, but they weren't getting sold because no one was showing up. But you make them free, and someone comes to the door, and they may buy additional drinks.
So it's not that everybody has a price; it's that everybody has like a certain form of value.
I think so. Okay. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the construct. That's the way to think about it. It means more to me within context. Like I said, a venue may be giving out free drinks versus, not selling any drinks. The revenue is exactly the same. If you think about it, but giving out a free drink may entice someone to actually pay for the next one. So that's from the perspective of a Dogecoin, I may not necessarily have a lot of value there, but I can entice someone now to open a wallet. And, because I've now enticed someone to open a wallet, I can give them more of something that has no value. And then at some point they want to be able to participate in something where they might be able to get some value. So maybe they want to play a game and they say, oh, well, what's that other funky coin? How do I get some of that? And I get them to an exchange,
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
And that's, I think, how the story has gone. With these things. The question is, how many of them do you need? And the answer is probably as many as it takes to get the rest of the world, on crypto. So, we have plenty more to go, I think.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a demographic-based one, like, what's Dogecoin for bankers? What's the weird, stupid thing that will make bankers go, now I get it. Now I should cross the threshold.
That's exactly it. There's a Dogecoin for everyone. Yeah. There are also cat coins.
Yes.
So.
That's and if people collected their personal data, then we would know which coin to launch at them, I guess. To tie in your previous point, yeah.
And that's I think that's where the market still has opportunity for innovation, is because there are other things, than besides dog and cat coins. Maybe they're rabbit coins. I think it already is a bunny token, but you can think about a variety of preferences and how you meet those communities. You already see that in the NFT space, where you see digital collectibles, being targeted specifically, to basketball fans, and you see digital collectibles being, sold to comic book fans, and it kind of goes from there.
Yeah, I'd never felt so optimistic about the crazy weirdness. Like I understand the actual, utility now.
We're very optimistic about the crazy weirdness. That's that's where all our value comes from. So
All the value in DeFi insurance is coming from the crazy weirdness. I guess up the stream far enough, yeah.
Yeah, up the stream far enough, it's the idea that this cryptocurrency, which technically doesn't exist, it's really just a computation of balances on the ledger, right? That reflects some form of power consumption and processing, dedicated to solving a math problem, is worth something. And there are a group of people who believe that, and there are a group of people who don't, and we work with the group of people who do. That's
yeah.
And some people would say that's crazy weirdness.
And it's not that much crazier than having a paper certificate. Someone pointed out, I think it was Christian Kmart, pointed out that a currency like a dollar bill is actually a contract. It's supposed to say like the bearer may redeem for something. It's like a contract, like a legal contract. Mm-hmm. And then if you detach it from the underlying asset, then it's not really a contract anymore. It's just kind of nothing. And we've kind of lived with that for a while, and the digitization of that, even with credit cards and computerized payments of all kinds, PayPal, etc. It shouldn't be that much of a leap in terms of what's actually what exists versus what's valuable. The crypto innovation is not actually weird compared to precedent.
No, it's not. I mean, there are lots of other things, very much like that. And unfortunately, they often in history represent bubbles. And I think that's been where a lot of our retracing in the crypto community comes from, is the fear of bubble. Are we built on firm ground? Are we built on something that's reasonable? Is there enough value that's being driven, in the froth of the market? And, the way that we quantify value is, what else is being built on top of the technology? What are people able to achieve? How is it creating, new opportunities? What is, it really comes down to, a lot of, again, subjective measures, but each one of those decisions, determine whether someone else opens a wallet today. They open a wallet, they make a purchase, they buy another Dogecoin.
All right. Note to self. Launch a Dogecoin.
Well, note to self. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah, indeed.
In our case, we have a honey badger. We like our honey badger. But no, actually, one of the best compliments I've received about our project so far has been, I saw your mascot and I thought it was a meme coin, but then I found out you did more. I said, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering about that. Is the ideal approach actually to wrap a serious project in a joke? Is that objectively superior than being face value serious?
I think so. I think so. At least then you have plausible deniability when it doesn't go over well.
It's striking me as pretty anti-fragile, man. We have to become sillier. I've always been high-minded and full of purpose.
Yeah. We'll bring you into the marketing conversation.
Yeah, I'm interested. I have things to learn here. That's interesting. It's very interesting indeed. Yeah, man. We were talking about pizza preferences earlier. Do you like deep dish because you're in Chicago?
I actually had an argument with someone the other day about whether New York pizza was better than Chicago pizza and why.
Yeah.
There was no winning that year.
No, I was going to say,
Of course not.
you're in
There's
the
no
wrong
winning.
town, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
There was no
literally in
winning.
the worst place.
And what's great is, James, being in London, you're able to say that. that the reputation of the place precedes itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is it actually any good though, Chicago pizza?
Yeah, no, it's good. You know,
Good.
I love it. I love it.
You know, it's quite good. I'll leave it at that. I still need to be here for a little bit longer. But yeah, to the point of preferences, you know, again, as long as there are opportunities to have those discussions, you know, there will be different types of pizza, and you know, we're pretty sure that, you know, people are going to want to, you know, people are going to want to have a variety of other things along the way, you know. So, you know, we you know, for instance, in our project, think that there are opportunities for lots of different insurance companies. You know, we think that there are lots of opportunities for lots of different, you know, meme coins. We think that there, you know, the market is too small. And, you know, to your point earlier, Michael, you know, first mover sometimes has an advantage. Other times, first mover has to educate the market, and the second mover has the advantage.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, so, you know, there are lots of things that we find, you know, where, again, because of the choice of the way the technology was created, it can't necessarily evolve. You know, in the second, you know, after educating the market, it's the newer implementations that are able to pivot and take advantage of the educated customer.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling that's been the case with BitClout, which technically we did beat them by a considerable margin. So technically we're first, but they did educate the market very, very, very successfully in certain respects. And because after they launched, my VC meetings were way quicker. I did not have to do the 20-minute, this is why markets for credibility are the future spiel as much.
So BitClout, if you're listening, thanks for paving the way.
You know, keep them as a footnote in your quarterlies.
Indeed.
You know.
Indeed. Yeah, I also wanted, I brought up the pizza thing a little bit jokingly, but also because I'm hungry. And we were talking about pizza originally as an example of personal data. And I wonder, to what extent does having a detailed picture of someone's personal data provide like a way to do mind control on them in like a Skinnerian sense? Like to how much density, how dense are people that like if you know everything about them, you can just go poke and then they go and do this thing?
Well, I mean, we saw the we saw the Trump election cycle with Cambridge Analytica, that 30 words or less can tell whether someone's Toyota or Tesla, urban or suburban, you know, college educated or not, you know, and typify someone into how many hundreds of archetypes. So I mean,
I should probably read that thing. That became public. Yeah, I should definitely read that thing.
I mean, the research has always been public. I think you know, the weaponization was what was novel. So you know, so yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell about people. You can extrapolate, I guess. You know, the centralization, decentralization thing.
Hillary Clinton. Try not to say Hillary Clinton though is in the basement of the pizza parlor. Don't do that. Going back to the pizza analogy.
Right. Yes. Interesting connection. There's a meme coin for you. Pizza coin there. There's a. Oh man, I was trying to say something really smart, but you know, I think some fuses just blew. Yeah, right. So you can extrapolate from 30 words, you know, all this information and all these preferences and stuff. Can you? All right. Here's what it is. It's on the centralization decentralization spectrum. What's being decided is who has power. And I think it's kind of yet to be decided whether it's better for only governments to have, for example, nuclear bombs, or if it's better for everyone to have nuclear bombs. And nuclear bombs just represent powerful technology. It could be data on everyone in the world. It could be central banking power, whatever. But progress seems to involve decentralization, not just in the way that crypto nerds mean it, but the distribution of power from the centralized entities that invent it to basically everyone. Like now we all have giant computers in our pockets, It used to be just a thing that a few laboratories had, So I guess that's the thing. Like, do you foresee dangers or downsides in people having as much data as Facebook, kind of like on an individual basis? Because it seems like if blockchain, own your data movements have their way, that's kind of what the future might look like.
The truth of the matter is, I can own everyone's data. I really don't have enough time to use it.
Yeah.
I really don't have enough time to use it, and I barely have enough time to use my data.
Well, that's because you're doing cool stuff, but there's going to be so many bored people born,
Yeah, people who want to do stuff for other people. People with lots of free time. I mean, you might call them entrepreneurs. They go out there.
Yeah.
They go out there. They try to figure out what to do with all that data, and before you know it, they create a company. But I think that as long as you can identify the actors who have the data, as long as you can, correct your data, in some ways, control the disclosure of that data. I don't care how many of those actors there are, but I would say, I have to know who they are, and I have to be able to change, wrong data, and I should be able to affect the disclosure of that data.
Oh, wrong data. That's actually a great point. It might be, like how fighter jets send out flares to deflect missiles and like get them locked onto the wrong signal. Maybe the defense against having all your data mined all the time is to just constantly be spewing out BS data to confound the data collectors. Man, I wish Michael were here. I know. I wish you were here to hear that.
Hey, you're a genius. Damn.
All right. Well, we'll give him a minute or two because I really want to see if that's feasible. It's so harebrained, but it also makes some sense.
Mm-hmm.
But in all seriousness, Chicago pizza is indeed great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you guys are really defending it. Like if we left it on the note that it isn't that great, like we're gonna, stuff's gonna go down.
Well, it's kind of the underdog because New York is New York. But yeah, man, I'll take a deep dish pizza.
I'm like super pessimistic on food. Like I'm terrible to talk to about food.
Bearish on food.
I don't really believe in amazingly tasting food.
Well, you do live in the UK, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably why. But I've been to some pretty good restaurants where like people are like, dude, the food here, it's amazing, and it's not British food, it's like Italian food. I like Italian food, but people are like, man, it blew me away. I'm like, nah, I don't believe it. I think most people are lying. Like I think it's mostly food. Good food is mostly sunk cost. Like you're gonna force yourself to enjoy it. So because you've paid, which is what I think a lot of Michelin star food is. Caveat to that, I've never been to a Michelin star restaurant and I want to, but like when I'm watching it, I'm like, that isn't as good as people are saying. You're all lying, yeah. And then I turn off the TV. And go to
that I mean, there is some sense in that reaction. I've never understood watching food shows and cooking shows. It's just like you get all tantalized, and then it's like porn with less release. Right. But in any case,
well, no, you know what? It isn't, not for that reason. But like a lot of people watch food programming and eat but they're watching Gordon Ramsay like make the best, I don't know, risotto ever that he spent 10 hours on, and they're sat there with like a bowl of, they've got like a bowl of cereal or something, and that
totally
it's like tricking. It's like if I just focus on that, so much that my brain will believe it.
Yeah. No, you're
Because
totally right.
you know what I mean? I just think food programming is ridiculous. Because like, what's your average food program? It's like 4 recipes. No one's making them. People make like the average recipes, right? No one's making these. Same with cookbooks. Man, I'm going deep into my food pessimism here. But people don't use cookbooks.
I mean, it's all online now. Like, so people use online cookbooks.
People don't eat.
My wife does.
Behave.
It's true.
It's the main conspiracy. People don't eat.
Yeah, it's all sun gazing and IVs. Man, I lost so many threads there.
I think, well, you're on about false data, but I think Michael might be finally gone.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm just signing into Telegram to see if he sent me any messages to hypothesize on that. But let's give him his last comment. I really want to. Oh, he's back. I want to ask him that thing.
Okay, sorry
Hello.
about that. Hey,
All good.
hello again.
Yes. So
this time the device decided to let its spirit catch up, and
very nice.
I think we're in a good place.
Right on. So I wanted to ask you, is it feasible as like a defense against data collection to have like a data spoofing app or something like that, so that instead of Facebook knowing my pizza preferences, it thinks I'm like a sushi-holic, and it just sends out false data all the time to confound the.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's absolutely possible to do that.
That's the best defense against data collection I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Having studied the problem for a whole minute now.
Yeah, there are ways to do that.
That's cool. That's fun.
Man, I saw someone at a conference talk about how he could fool search engines into thinking that he was a teenage girl who loved ponies.
That's what he says.
That's what he claimed.
I completely believe you could do that, but it would take effort. It would be really nice if I had like an effortless thing that I could just go, all right, turn this on. I don't want Facebook knowing that I'm shopping for basketballs right now, and just
there's a thing.
Found it.
There's a lot of people who do this on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
No. Please.
Well, one of the things I was saying that someone taught me ages ago, right? If a really good thing to do on Twitter specifically is block every single advert you see, even the ones that are just promoted by companies, and eventually you get to this really weird place where the algorithms, because you're blocking certain things, the algorithm obviously saying, oh, they don't like that advert. But eventually, if you keep saying no, I don't want to see anything, you get to this really strange place where the adverts have really like no cohesion. You're in like a no man's land of advertising. It's really peculiar.
The ad market of last resort.
Yeah, just like they're just. Well, I don't know what this guy likes.
I don't know. He was offended. He was offended by the peanut butter sandwich. We can't pitch that.
That is funny. Ad feeds as modern art.
But it's true. It's true. I mean, because a lot of especially the content you consume is incentivized by the content you've consumed in the past. So, and there's no training out of that. I mean, even if we have the same general opinions about things, our news feeds look specifically different on the basis of what we've clicked on. And it's something that travels with us. I would say that you could pretty much spoof that idea of Mike, you're shopping for a basketball up into the point where your credit card gets the basketball transaction.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So we can't spoof the actual transaction.
Right.
Well, that's why people like Richard Stallman go on about using cash, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just untraceable.
It's there are easier ways to preserve your privacy than cryptocurrency.
Yeah, like every other option.
Literally
every other option.
Exactly. So for people who think they got a private key and they're now privacy preserving, not really. I mean, your transactions are forever on a chain that's shared with everyone else.
Yeah. Man, it's been a great pleasure having you. I want to respect your time. give you full permission to excuse yourself because we have filled the time that we had set out. But
No,
it's always great to talk.
I apologize for the time my phone has claimed from us,
No worries, man.
independently. But
you are in the enviable position of having too much to do, and so am I actually. But for some reason, I can do it from my desk. I guess I'm fortunate in that way. But yeah, man, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk and see you and hear about how things are going. I love seeing Union's success just kind of around the world, around the Twitterverse, and looking forward to more.
Hey, thank you so much for your time and hospitality. It's cool to see Ideamarket take off. So pretty cool to be connected in this way and actually not talk about the project as much as I usually do when I go on one of these things. So actually think about real stuff.
Yeah, man. Happy to provide one of those little vacations.
No, and not to say that we can't talk about the project at some other point, but this has definitely been real cool, and I'm glad that you guys do this. I'm looking forward to seeing more, what you come up with. So, thank you.
Excellent. Great pleasure. Thanks so much.
Hey, take care. Good talk.
All right. See you later.
Here.
See you, man.
Bye.